Greetings and salutations, folks, and welcome once again, as always, to another helping of Mr H's Hot Pot. You join me today, as you can probably hear in the background and see through the window over my shoulder there, on a very rainy, wet, miserable day. I was hoping to go on a bit of a bimble for you, as I've got one or two little things lined up and in the old noggin that's quite interesting, but not too far away from my home location. Unfortunately, the old weather has typically had other ideas. But the weather does match Mr H's mood, because as you've probably gathered from the title of this video, I got the bad news the other day that Mr H's favourite pie shop will be closing very soon. Mrs Gents, or Gents Pie Shop of 2 Pepper Lane, Standish, will be wrapping up shortly. I think in about a couple of months' time. And the reason for that is Mrs Gent's husband, Malcolm, who she runs the shop with, you never really saw Malcolm. He was always in the background. He was never front of house. All you'd do is you'd see him flitting around in the kitchen behind, if ever you went in. He's had ill health recently, and Mrs Gent has decided it's time to call it a day and enjoy retirement and concentrate on her husband. And I didn't realise that Mrs Gent, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, I'm sorry Carol if you do, but I didn't realise she was 80 years of age and she'd been working since she was 14, so if anybody deserves a break, she certainly does. But I am going to miss Mrs Gent, because it was the yardstick that I used to use for all of my pie reviews. Anybody who watches my channel regularly will know that I do a series of videos who makes the best pies in the Northwest. And I always used her shop as the yardstick, because it was cheap. I think it's only £1.60 a pie, and she only recently put that up in the past year to be £1.50 for donkey's years. And they're good quality pies, so I am going to miss it. I first went into Gents Pie Shop way back in 1997. I'd be 23 at the time. And I worked for a little one-man and a band type of outfit in the building trade. I've never worked for the big companies, mainly because you don't get the same crack on big building sites as you get with smaller companies. It's all chasing money and how much is he making and all that rubbish, and I didn't want to get involved in that. So I've always stuck with smaller firms, or I did. And I was doing a job not too far away from Mrs Gent's Pie Shop, and the owner of the company at the time, Bert Wild from Standish Property Services, he said, "We've got a job on at Ludlow Street." And all lads straight away, their eyes lit up and their faces lit up, and they said, "Oh, brilliant, brew time at Mrs Gents," and all this business. And I'm like, "What's Mrs Gents?" Because I come from the other side of Wigan. They said, "Bring your money in tomorrow, lad, and you'll see." So I took my money in when we started job, and sure enough, there was all these goodies laid out, old-fashioned type bakery. And I bit into, I think it was an hot pot I had first of all from Mrs Gents, and it was brilliant. It really tasted lovely, and I've been a fan ever since. So it's come as a bit of a blow finding that she's going to be wrapping up. And it's been done on quiet, really. She's not made a big song and dance about it. I only found out because I overheard somebody talking the other day in the chippy that's next door to it, which is also a good chippy. I'll have to review that at some point. But yeah, really going to miss Mrs Gent. But like I said, she's been working since she's 14 and she's in her 80s, so she deserves the break, really, doesn't she? She really does. But I do suggest that if you haven't already tried Mrs Gents, you get down there, because very soon it will be no more. The only problem with that is if you fall in love with her items of comestibility, you know that they're going to end very soon. I believe it's going to become a cake shop. She's sold the business on to someone else, but she's decided anyway not to sell it to another baker like herself. She had many offers and people were asking her, "Can you show us how you do it?" And she just decided, no, I'm not going to do that. Not because she wants to be nasty, but simply she doesn't want to carry on working any longer than necessary. And there's also the side of it that whoever takes it over will look at her prices, £1.60, and say, "You're charging way too less, I'm going to put the price up." They'll put the price up, and they'll probably change 1 or 2 ingredients. They'll probably put some cheaper ingredients in, and they won't taste the same. And a good name will be ruined. So she's doing the right thing going out on an eye. But I think it's going to be a bespoke cake shop where you can buy wedding cakes and birthday cakes and things like that. But sadly, no mate and prater pies. However, Hot Potters, I do have one here in my grubby little hands. I had to nip in one last time. It won't be the last time, but it'll be the last time I feature it in a video. And get one, because look at that, for £1.60. You can't beat that, can you? She must have only been doing it for the love of baking, because there's no way. I've tried beating Mrs Gents prices, as many of you know in my series of videos, and I've just not been able to do it. The closest I came was Blackburn's in St Helens, which was £1.80 a pie, but you can't beat that, can you? I also remember another, or a former Wigan YouTuber, a fellow by the name of Barry Titler, and he did a bit of a video on Mrs Gents, and it went quite viral. It really did. It made a shop quite famous. People were coming from all over based off that. I think he got like 20,000 hits or something like that off bat, which is very good, you know. And I think he was featured on Lad Bible. He made the phrase up, scrum diddly umptious, and that's probably the best way to describe the stuff. Anyway, for one last time, Hot Potters, here's a Mrs Gents pie. And Barry, if you're watching this, lad, this one's for you. Sadly, unless you get down there pretty quick, when you're in that HGV of yours, you're never going to get to taste a Mrs Gents pie again. But I am, and I'm going to enjoy it. If you do want to get down there, she's located at 2 Pepper Lane, Standish. But you need to be quick, because once that sale goes through, she's hanging a penny up, and you won't see her for dust. Anyway, until the next time, Hot Potters, bye-bye for now.